And we have started.
All
Go.
right. Well, welcome to another exciting episode of All Things 3D. Today is Friday, 7/18, July 18th, 2014, and this is our special Friday episode where we talk about things that are in the news on All Things 3D. I'm your co-host Chris Kopak, and this is
This is Mike. Hey, you look a little funny today. Are you in a different location, buddy?
yeah, I'm at home working from home this morning. And yeah, so we have picked out a couple cool news items. I guess I'll jump right into it. The first one that I saw that was kind of interesting, I don't know how well this is going to go, but one that I saw this week is Home Depot. Home Depot now bringing in, let me try to blow this up for you. Home Depot bringing in MakerBot printers.
It's
So
about time, right?
yeah, well, I think it's interesting. The market for makers, do-it-yourselfers, people shopping at Home Depot. You've got one segment of people that are your contractors and people that are doing it as a profession, but I would say a huge segment of Home Depot shoppers are kind of the do-it-yourself type people. So why not try to cater to them with the MakerBot? So I think it's probably a really good move on their part. It seems like a really solid step in the right direction into the mainstream. So they have them pretty much priced at the regular run-of-the-mill prices. So
Yeah.
whether you buy it directly from MakerBot or not, but they have them in stores, in select stores in Chicago, New York City, Los Angeles, and San Francisco. And so they have actually brought them in, and they have physical inventory of machines and materials. So pretty cool.
Yeah, well, it is really cool. Other than do you want a MakerBot? And as you know, Chris, I own a MakerBot, and it is one of my most dependable printers. But I've been thinking of I want another printer, and the one that I was looking at is they're more pricier. I think it's $7,500. Really tall build size, which is I guess its biggest plus. But then I did a little bit more looking into it, and it's not a dual extruding type printer. So
Hmm.
for $7,500, that's a lot of money to spend. Now I'll have to go back and look, but I was pretty sure because I was looking for it in one of my notes that we're going to talk about for next week. I'm going to bring up at the end and that I came up with a printer that I think is going to be pretty cool. But yeah, I think that's kind of neat. What's funny is because I go to Home Depot to buy my cleanup accessories and my shaping tools for my 3D print stuff. So
Sure, sure, sure.
again, well, good item. So I'm going to jump in with my item, um, which again is a little different because we are, let's see, come on, start the screen. Looking at, and we've talked about this before on some of our roundtable, and that's actually creating a 3D printer that prints printed circuit boards. And
That's
it looks
right.
like we've got a Kickstarter. It looks like they're looking to get $100,000. They've got 33 days. They don't look like they're doing really well. But it is an interesting design or an idea where you literally, instead of extruding plastic, it appears that you extruded some type of uh, metallic material, foil, so that you can create your copper circuits. The problem is they've got a lot of support campaign pledges, but then the actual price looks to appear to be $24.99 for the early bird, and then jumps up to $3,000. And if you read about it, it still looks like it's in its prototyping stage. And as it shows here, February 2015 or April 2015 for the 3000. So it's about, what, 9 months away. And as you know, 9 months normally equates to add another 6 months normally. So you're probably going to be looking at 13, a little over a year before you finally get your product. I think a lot of people are shying away from that. So, I wish them luck. It is kind of a cool idea. But at the same time, Chris, you've made some circuit boards, right?
Well, I wouldn't go that far and call them actual circuit boards. I'm getting into, learning Eagle and learning how to design my own PCBs, but actually silk screening them, no, I have not done that. I've, read up on it and done the YouTube videos, and I know how it's done for the most part, but I've never done it myself.
Okay. Well, I date you by a few centuries now. 10, 20 years, but I used to design mine and actually use the acid bass and the copper, and but I made a few prototypes. But just like in this business, you make a few prototypes and then you go directly. And I guess we're still back on my screen. Then you go back into let me change back to me. Then you go back into to a vendor to print out multiples. And I think we've got Pinoco, is that one of the sources? There's a few sources that can build circuit boards for a very reasonable price. So this is what they're going to be fighting against, is these already in place PC board manufacturers where you send them a design and for a reasonable price they'll send you back a batch of them. So
yeah, so batch PCBs. My understanding is if you custom design your own and you want to prototype your PCB design, the really right now you are limited in the prototyping phase to either have your own manufacturing facility or to have one of these batch PCB manufacturers. But the batch manufacturers, you may be the first one onto the big batch, or you may be the last one, because they basically have these gigantic, circuit boards that they do. They print a bunch of jobs on the same circuit board, essentially.
Yeah, you have to put them in a queue so they fit that one board. So
right. So you may be looking at 6 weeks out on your project. So this may be a good option where if you're trying to go through iterations, close together, you're trying to blow through many iterations, it's going to take, you're not going to hit your mark on your first iteration, you're going to need to do several. This may be a good option. So I think the home brewing PCB manufacturing machines are definitely another frontier that we're going to see a lot of growth in the market.
No, okay, I'll take the positive on that. One other caveat is, what is your line widths, which are really important. The circuit that they're showing in their example has very thick lines.
Sure.
So that will determine the density of components on the board and so forth. So again, they're the first, and hopefully we'll see more.
Right.
Okay. So on to you, Chris.
Okay, so my next one is a little bit on the fringe.
What's new?
So this was an interesting one I saw this week.
I was going to use that one.
So this is a Japanese artist, Megumi Igarashi. She's arrested for 3D printing artwork based on her vagina. And in Japan, they have these crazy obscenity laws. The really strict pornography laws. So she took a Konica Minolta, it looks like, scanner, and decided to scan her private parts and then turn them into art displays, different forms of art displays. You can go to spoon-tamago, TAMAGO.com, and you can see this article, and you can see she actually turned her lady bits into a kayak. And
that's a good one.
And she has this moon landing type scene.
No, it looks like a hazmat situation.
She has this interesting transformer that has a. It's not a male transformer; it's a female. And so all kinds of different things. I thought it was interesting, but they charged her with obscenity laws and actually arrested her. And I think it, just like any artist, it probably is, any PR is good PR, or any PR is good PR. If you're an artist, I mean, getting arrested for your artwork is actually,
Exactly. She's gone viral now.
Yeah,
she's worldwide, and I think it's great. I mean,
yeah.
Yeah, I like. I think if you read further in it, she was doing all this because either a Kickstarter or Indiegogo. She was trying to raise the money to create the Volvo kayak,
The Volva
and
kayak, pretty funny.
which is what she's in right now. Which I guess she made the money, but I think that was really funny. So yeah, I was thinking of that one too, and I said, no, that might be a little too risque. But you're the young guy. Glad you approached it.
Okay. So what do you got
Okay.
for us, Mike?
Well, I'm going to continue on the human anatomy, and this one's going to be neat because let's see where my screen is. Um, we're actually going to be interviewing this guy next week, and he's Dr. McNameen or McNiman. He's from Australia, and he's from the director of center of the Monash University. And what he's doing is literally 3D printing out all the body parts that would be representative of a cadaver. And one of the reasons they did it, and we already know this, is that there are certain people or certain countries, like I think it's Malaysia is one of these countries, that have laws against using cadavers, including medical research. So they have been looking for other ways to be able to, obviously display, learn, and I'm assuming eventually to operate and go through the process as though it were a cadaver. Um, if you notice here, I think you asked me what kind of printer. What does that look like? That looks like a 3D system type printer, if I remember
Or
correctly.
it looks kind of like a Z Corp.
Yeah, well, which is 3D systems now.
Sure.
But it's multiple colors, and there is actually Dr. McNeeman, um, who's displaying a hand, and I told him the story of my wife and her meningioma, and he sent me an image of the upper orbital roof that's in full color. So they've already did the entire skull. So it's going to be really neat to talk with him, learn about his workflow and how he actually goes through the process of uh, scanning. Obviously, they use CT and MRI just like I was, but from my experience, it is a very, very cumbersome and lengthy process because you literally have to create uh, layers of the different areas of the body by hand. There is no algorithms or tools to do that.
Oh
So it'll
wow.
be very interesting to see who maybe he's got a staff of students that are doing it for him. And here again, it's a really close-up look of the hand itself. Let me go ahead and magnify. Um, Close-up of the hand so you can see the detail, the fatty tissue, the bones, the tendons, and the venous systems, and the muscular structure. So as though it were a cadaver.
Wow.
And I like this last one here. The old days, just take some guy off the street, cut him open. No, kidding. So again, we're going to be interviewing him next week, so look forward to that. And on back to you.
All right. So this next one, let's pull this up. So this next one is pretty simple. I have, I'm actually really interested in this whole 3D printing food kind of movement because I think it's, it may not necessarily,
I
monetize
tweeted
into
this
some.
one.
Oh, you did?
Yeah,
And yeah.
and I'll
So
tell you why in a minute.
and it may or may not ever be anything world changing, but it's just kind of interesting. It's kind of a fringe 3D printing topic is the food thing. And so some MIT students, of course, they made a 3D printed ice cream machine. So they basically stacked a soft serve Cuisinart, and then they used a solid doodle and some liquid nitrogen to actually 3D print soft serve ice cream into designs that they wanted. So, just kind of an interesting take on it. They're using liquid nitrogen to keep the build chamber cool, so they can so that the ice cream will stay, the shape that they print it in. So, but just kind of an interesting topic. I thought it was interesting, noteworthy news.
The irony of this is that I believe the night before, I guess at the point of slumbering, I was dreaming about 3D printing ice cream. It's a
Oh.
diameter on it. And then I see this the next morning, and I had to tweet it. I was just dreaming about printing ice cream. Because the consistency of soft, just I don't know, the whole thing just kind of reminded me of this. And then the next thing you know, these guys at MIT, it's always the guys at MIT,
Hmm.
are coming up with some wacky things. So that's great. I'm glad you're picking the ones that I thought, well, which one should I do? And you're picking those others. So staying on the strange, well, I don't think it's that strange, but it is a little different. um, I wouldn't say as bad as the vagina one, but is a Korean startup, and I tried to look for the actual company, and they don't seem to have a website, or maybe I just don't know Korean. But
Meet meet my
yeah,
baby.
well, that's the title of it, but the company's name is 3D Story Core, and I couldn't find anything or any links to them. But essentially, what they're doing is they've got supposedly a proprietary technique where they can take ultrasound, and I'm going to get a little bit about the theory, not much, that I find that a little unique because ultrasound or the 3D ultrasound, because I just did a presentation on 3D medicine, 3D ultrasound isn't like CT or MRI tomography. They do a lot of this in hardware by using angular displacement of the sonic beams. So you have your front on, which is your 2D, but you also take echoes from the sides at different angles, and then you compute that in to create the 3D image. That's why you can see it actually moving in 3D as you move the wand. And so one of the things that I found out, because I wanted to do something like this about 8 or 9 months ago, is that at least in the GE's case, it's a proprietary system, and you only get images of the 3D object. You don't get the slices that you do with CT or MRI. So it'll be interesting how they do that. I've been thinking of using some depth map routines in order to develop the 3D out of it, or take multiple stereo 3D images and using stereoscopic imagery process to create the depth information. So I'm wondering if they're doing something like that. But instead of just taking the image, and let's see where we have, this is what normally comes out of a 3D. So notice there's a lot of noise here. They're actually taking the mesh and conforming it onto a doll. Uh, so that's why it gives it such a clean look. It's not necessarily what the shape of the baby looks like, but they're kind of working with maybe like the facial structure and then superimposing it on the rest of the object. And then it talks about other companies who have been doing this as well. And then it talks about the Koreans' push now for 3D. It seems like a lot of the Asian countries are making it a national effort to do 3D. And so it's talking about the 3D printer that they're going to be working with. And then here it's actually on display. So some people think this is macabre or kind of weird, but it's no different than going in these little studios, and we have one in Atascadero that you can go in if you're pregnant and get a 3D or 4D, which is 3D in motion, of your baby. And they
Hmm.
have a little studio where a whole family can come in and watch it on the screen. So, and I don't know how well she's doing, but the story she was telling me, seemed kind of like fun. It wasn't weird. So I don't think creating something like this, small figure, is any different than creating your baby shoes. It's the same thing. It's a memento. I guess the only sad thing is if for some reason the child dies before birth, but maybe even then, I don't know. So,
Okay, yeah. I don't
uh,
think that's a consider. Yeah,
yeah. All
uh,
right.
yeah,
So
but
that's it
yeah,
for the news for me.
cool. Well,
Yeah.
thanks, Mike.
Yeah, and then we've got obviously our projects and our picks of the week. So why don't you go with yours, Chris?
Oh, my pick for the week? No, I didn't come up with a pick for the week.
Oh,
Well,
you've
I
always
had
got
one.
something.
Oh, geez, you're gonna put me on the spot like this.
You got 10 minutes. Actually, if you don't have anything, I can fill the time.
Okay,
I got
go for
tons. Okay, how about I
I.
do mine and then you can think of something?
You got it.
Okay, so in our Central Coast 3D user group meeting, which was last Wednesday, by the way, if you're on the Central Coast and you're listening, we do it every Wednesday, third Wednesday of the month between 6 and 8 p.m. at the Sands Inn and Suites. So if you get a chance, come on out. We've got all kinds of interesting topics. We do tutorials. We have presenters. We just had Brad Hill of the little
That's my pick.
PLA sleigh Okay, well, you can talk about that in a moment. And now it's the little RP, and I told him put in a little lowercase I in there and call it the little rip, and maybe I can push him to do that. But uh, it's a cool device, and we'll let Chris talk about it in a moment. But we just had him on, and it was a fairly good turnout, and everybody was interested in it. But because Brad Hill kind of took up the soapbox, I didn't get a chance to talk about my software. And I just want to say that I really love this, and I'm going to push to it. It's called 3D Coat, and everybody has heard of uh, ZBrush, and then they've got these free products called Mesh Mixer and Sculptress. But 3D Coat, which is not free, you can get a 30-day trial demo, or you can get a student version for $99, or you can go out to the Steam site, the place that creates video games, and get a version there for $99. Or you can get the pro version for, I believe it's $400, like $395. But it does pretty much everything ZBrush does for half the price if you get the pro version or $99. And yeah, you say you could use Sculptress or some other things, but it provides a lot of good tools. So what's the big difference between the Pro version and the $99 version? Just the
What is it?
size of the textures. The textures themselves. I'll go ahead and play the video in the background. Oh, good, it works. So you can hear me, and I can turn up the sound. Can you hear that, Chris?
Yeah, just about.
Okay, it's going to be, but it's just music in the background. But here you get a little bit of an idea on the video here. If you work with Sculptress or Mixmisher, I mean, this literally, it's like painting and sculpting. See, notice he's putting a beard on him, and then you can actually use it for other hardware, and I've been using it to add parts. And then if you get your one of these low-cost or open-source renderers, you can get photorealistic parts. And and then the other thing that this thing does well, besides, and it's called voxel sculpting. It kind of does decimation on the fly, so you're working with a really high voxel mesh, so it conforms like clay.
Hmm.
And what I used it for is to clean up some of the 3D models that I've been scanning, which is going to be my next item, so I'll segue into that. But it has a lot of strengths. The important thing is if you're familiar with your standard 3D applications, or more importantly, like Photoshop, a lot of the tool structures, like the brushes, are laid out like that. So it's very intuitive. If you're already in the 2D world and wanting to get into 3D, this might be the choice. And at $99, you can't beat it. And again, as a student, you can buy that version or go out to Steam and get theirs. In fact, they just went off sale, but last month it was $79, so it's a pretty good deal. And it's a cool tool, and if you want to get into the organic type of mesh modification, this may be the direct or the choice to go with. But if you notice, he's doing extrusion and things like that that we're familiar with in the standard modeling. So it's a versatile tool. And the other thing that I forgot, the reason it's called 3D Coat, is because you can paint with it. And you can do vertex painting. So you can literally use brushes and paint just like if you were in Photoshop on a 3D model. And
Hmm.
you can also do projection, and you can manipulate your, what we call your texture maps. And so you could use it for gaming. You can use it to create figures, which is what I do. It's a very versatile tool, very flexible, and very easy to learn. Plenty of tutorials. See what he's doing right now, actually painting, and notice it's going directly to the textures, the UV maps.
Wow.
And it's fast. It's faster, in my opinion, than ZBrush. It screams on, obviously I got some fairly high performance machines, but even on my laptop, it runs really well. Now notice he's doing projection mapping. He took a photograph and is now projecting it on the 3D model, and
Wow.
which is what I got it for. So now I'll be able to project onto my sculpts. So pretty cool. And again, if you go out to Steam, here's the same program that you can get for $99. So Pro version gives you higher textures, and you can go up to 8K. The Steam version is only 2K, and there may be a few other features you don't get. Oh, you can't use it for professional use. It's only for personal use. So on to that, as we've talked about in the past, I have been working on a lens system for the Structure IO and the soon-to-be produced 3D Systems iSense that allows you to get, in my opinion, $10,000 scan quality. And this is our friend Brian from Made Solid who came out Friday, and I scanned him, I'd say, in about 30 seconds. Did a little cleanup using the 3D coat that we just talked about, but I did a full 360 scan of him. Um, yeah, I have to say, I did not expect this, but when you can find some good quality lenses, which is what I finally came up with, you can get some spectacular results. And I'll switch back to my screen real quick. And essentially, this is what it looks like. And Chris is going to help me out and create some higher class prototypes. I did this one myself. It's a little crude. Yep, bring it up higher. So essentially, it's a 3-lens system. Fits on the front of the Structure IO. Then it has a separate attachment that it goes off to the side to cover the color lens. So now you'll be able to do, as I call it, close-up color as well. And they're working on the application right now to provide that very soon. So you'll be literally able to do what they call vertex coloring. And believe it or not, this extra lens, because they said, well, you don't need that. No, you do, because it matches the optics of the other lens. So you can apply the same function to your mesh, to the texture, so everything wraps properly. But it does sharpen it, believe it or not. Even though it's got autofocus, it does sharpen it because it's like a close-up system. So it does work well. This is a crude. I've got a little tripod mount on it, and then a case, and this is actually an iPod Touch, which you can get at Costco for 164 bucks. With the Sconnect software, you have a wireless, untethered scanning device for altogether about $600. That rivals a $10,000 item. I'm just impressed.
That's pretty cool, Mike.
Yeah,
Pretty
and
cool.
well, and the meshes, I'll jump back to it, speak for themselves. It here's one of them now, and then I'll jump back to my models. I've got other ones in here. Here's a female, and I can't disclose the name, but so here's a female that I scanned as well. Yeah, they're fairly high resolution meshes. They have a lot of polygons, so they take a little while. In fact, I didn't tell you, Chris, I got an email from Sketchfab saying, we really like your models, but can you reduce the amount of voxels? I guess I was taking too much space. But I found out if you, and there you go, there's another one. This is more of a 270, but I did a little bit of work on the back, chopped off her arms. But again, pretty good quality for a little low-cost scanner.
Right.
As much as we like Steven Crossland from Fuel 3D, I think we're going to give him kind of a run for the money. They've got a cool, as you remember, they came down, or he came across and gave us a demo of the Fuel 3D, which its biggest strength is it takes 3D meshes very quickly in 1/30 of a second. You remember that, Chris?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So that'll be coming out soon. So there's going to be a lot of competition and a lot of options. So pretty neat. So if you want to go out to my Sketchfab, go out to, you mentioned you went out to Slow 3D Creators. Yes, I've got 2 different accounts. You'll have to go out to M.E. Balzer to find out all my models. So I'll have to consolidate the 2 accounts. But you'll see some of the examples there, and plus I've actually put in some 3D models of the case and other accessories that I'm working on for it. So that's about it for me. If you got something you want to share, which I think you do, which is that, and then we'll get into what we're going to talk about next week, and then we'll end it.
All
So
right. Well, as Mike mentioned at our meeting this week, our Central Coast 3D user group meeting, we had a special guest, Brad Hill. He brought in his little RP, little SLA machine, and which I was lucky enough to get my hands on one and bring it back to my office. Got it set up yesterday, so I should be printing on it today. But it's essentially a super high resolution open source SLA style printer, and it should be coming soon to Kickstarter within a month or two. And you can use either made solid resin or maker juice resin, and it is a DLP SLA printer, so you use a DLP projector, and the print size is pretty small. It's about 40 millimeter by 60 millimeter
Yeah.
by
And just
100.
don't go by that. I mean, it
But
is
the
extreme.
resolution is, yeah, the resolution is insane on it. So really high quality components, open source design. It's all laser cut melamine extruder rails, and then but high quality linear ball railings or linear ball
And
rails.
he now has a new tilt mechanism which allows him to actually create a larger build size and than I think what
That's
he's
right.
been identifying. And I've seen some image or some objects that he's creating, including the Me Stark, that's about 3 inches. So you can get some pretty decent little objects.
And
And
the
if you can
reason I
tell,
picked it up is yeah,
I'm
is
pretty
for high res.
envious because I wanted it, but I'm a nice guy, and Chris doesn't have an SLA. But speaking of that, he's also going to be working with the Form One or the Form Labs resins, and
Hmm.
so he's going to be working with that. And as I told you, you're welcome to have a little bit to try yourself. One thing that no other company has right now is clear, so that can create some pretty cool models as well. So you're welcome to have some of that.
Oh
I
well,
got a
thanks, Mike.
full bottle.
Awesome.
Okay, well, I agree. I'm envious, and you are going to bring it in Wednesday when we have our roundtable podcast, right?
Sure.
Okay. Well, he's going to give us a tutorial, if you remember.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's right.
yeah, and I'll mention it now. If you are tuning in, tune back in next Wednesday. We have our roundtable presentation. We've got some 3D modelers and build material experts coming in to talk about HP's up and coming 3D printer that's supposed to revolutionize the low end of the 3D market, not the consumer, but more of the low end professional market. So we shall see, and we're going to talk about that. We've actually got Eric from the where is it, Ultimaker, coming in from the Netherlands. Who else? I think we may even have Sam from Form Labs. So it's going to be an interesting discussion, as well as Brian. Brad will be there, and then let's see. I think we've got one other, so it should be a very interesting discussion. And then my other item that I want to talk about real quick is, I'm looking for a dual extruder because I am just simply jealous of Chris with his Fortis 250. Obviously I can't afford that printer, but I would really like to print in with two extruders because dissolvable filament
Support.
is the bomb. I know
Right.
that sounds kind of funny coming out of an old guy's mouth like mine,
But it is the
but it
bomb.
is, and I have to go to him to get certain things done because one of the things that I found if you have large flat objects that are flat on the bottom, great, as long as you have all of the 3D properties on top of it. As soon as you put some type of detail on the bottom and have to create supports for it, it completely destroys the appearance of that flat surface. And I want to get away from that, and that's why I've gone to Chris. But I've been looking for things, and like I mentioned, I was looking at the higher price, and again, it's $7,500 for the MakerBot high-end version, which I think only has one extruder. I could be wrong, but if that's the case, I'm not getting that. There's another one, the 3D System has their Cube Pro. I know your feelings about 3D System or Z-Core. I would have to think that maybe they're improving, but again, you're locked into their proprietary cartridge system, so that may be a drop. But they have been getting some good reviews for their Cube Pro. It's got a large build size, and it also comes in a single, dual, or even three extruder. And the price varies, but that's about $3,500 for the two. And then I saw this. It's called the Flash Forge. Well, the Flash Forge is silently gaining business in this country because, one, they're from China, but they've been launched on Amazon, and then they've got their own website called Flash Forge. But they came out with pretty much the MakerBot clone for about half the price. So people
Right.
have been buying it and they've been fairly satisfied with it. But then I saw this, which is a fully enclosed. Yeah, it's a plastic shell, but a lot of them are doing that. And, it looks like a microwave oven, but okay. Yours looks like a big commercial oven. So, but it has an LCD screen. But look at the price, $12.99. Dual extruders. You actually the filament is inside, so you don't have to worry about keeping it covered. So it's all built into it. How can you
Wow.
go wrong? And it looks like it has 3 customer reviews. I don't know if they're real or they just pushed them up there, but I've seen some of the prints. I'll play this in the background. Uh, uh, this is some guy's review of. Yeah, sorry. No, but I looked at some of the builds and they're pretty impressive. So I don't know. Obviously the parts could break down in a few months. If you look in the internals, it looks a lot like the Ultimaker, which I've had some issues with, but it's a really good printer as well. So, yeah, and it's about twice as much. So I don't know how you can go wrong at that price.
Hmm.
So I'm going to be looking into that and probably talk a little bit more about that next week.
Very
Uh,
cool.
yeah. So, okay, that's it. I'll shut my mouth and let you finish it up.
All right. Well, thanks again to all our listeners joining us on All Things 3D. The week is July 18th, 2014, and this was All Things 3D, a week in review.
Thanks.
So until next time, we'll see you next week.
Okay, bye.